Morning, morning YouTube. That's good. Today's video is one that it's an older video that I wasn't going to re-release, as it is somewhat controversial in the classic camping living history community. It is well known, my position on hammock camping and the authenticity of hammock camping in the early 20th century is well known among the community. This video talks about that, but I would be remiss as a researcher to ignore or hide any evidence that comes up during my research or in the course of researching classic camping in general, if I did not present the evidence that goes contrary to my opinion, as well as those that bolster it. Yesterday, this picture appeared on the Antique Overland Facebook group, and if you're not a member of that group and you're interested in classic camping, I definitely recommend going there and becoming a member. Now, if we look at this, this is the first picture I have ever seen of a hammock being used in a definitely camping situation, something that is arguably camping. I've had many people show me pictures of hammocks hanging from trees, saying, therefore, hammocks were used camping, and I'm going to say you can't use a hammock without a tree anywhere, no matter where it grows. Most people had trees in their backyards back then, unlike today, where the land your house is on used to be a pasture 40 years ago. So anyway, this picture appears to be, to me, some type of public gathering rather than what we consider recreational camping. My first impulse when I saw this was that it was taken at a county fair, much like the county fairs I talk about in a previous video, which I will link to at the end of this video, about counties and how that affected camping. But anyway, this is a picture of people with a hammock in a camping situation. Now, my opinion on that, as a longtime hammock camper, I will tell you my opinion on the hammock that is shown here is somebody may have decided that they were going to lay down and go to sleep in that, but before dawn they would be on the ground. Those hammocks are tremendously unstable, and once you are in a deep sleep REM state and your body moves, it's lost all ability to maintain a level posture on that hammock, and you'll rotate and you'll fall down. Anyway, there we go. Here is the evidence, contrary to my opinion. Now let's watch the rest of the video. On to the subject of hammock camping in the 1920s, and I want to open that discussion by talking about the importance of authenticity in the conduct of a classic camping re-encampment. I love that word. David Westcott came up with that word, a re-encampment. It's not a reenactment, it's a re-encampment. And what authenticity does is it's a teaching tool more than anything else. I've mentioned in other videos that you pay attention to small details for the other guys who you're with, so that when they look around the camp, they see the 1930s. Okay, you're helping them with their experience. But there's another reason why we should be authentic about what we do. I'm going to illustrate that by these two shirts I've got back here. Okay, this shirt is a wool shirt that is perfectly acceptable for wear at a classic camping re-encampment. It's made by St. John's Bay. I bought it on sale at Kohl's. St. John's Bay is Kohl's house brand. Okay, it is styled just like a 1920s. It is not out of place in a 1920s or a 1930s encampment. This shirt is the shirt I would recommend you get if you want to continue with your classic camping re-encampment adventures. Okay, this is a shirt made by Nathaneal Logsdon of Logsdon and Company, and he is my go-to guy for clothing of the 1920s and the 1930s. I can tell you all about tents and sleeping bags. Nathaneal can tell you about clothing. The important thing to note about the principal difference between these two shirts, okay, as you can see, they're very, very close. This one is styled pretty much exactly the way as a hunting shirt from the catalogs in the 1920s, but more importantly, the wool is a whole lot better. Okay, this probably made in Bangladesh or someplace like that. They use cheap child labor, and the wool is very thin, and you'll need additional clothing to make you warm. This is made in the United States out of wool, milled in the United States, and it is thick enough to actually keep you from getting cold in the winter. Okay? Authenticity matters, and one of the things you can learn about the period is the superiority of the type of wool that was being sold in the 1930s. So we would let you come to a re-encampment with one of these, no problem. Okay? You will have a better time, and you will learn more if you have authentic clothing. Okay? So, recently on Bannerman's Camp, there came up the discussion of 1920s hammocks and whether or not they would be acceptable in a re-encampment. I replied in the negative, and some feelings were hurt, I think. I regret that. And I should clarify my remarks in that the hammocks in the 1920s, if you come with a hammock made just like they made them in the 1920s, you would be acceptable. But more importantly, you would learn something. And what you would learn is that those hammocks sucked for camping. They didn't last long in the catalogs. They start showing up in the catalogs in the early 1920s. They were out of the catalogs as far as sporting goods are concerned before the 1930s. Okay, once a few people bought those hammocks and brought them out to camp in, they would tell all their friends, this thing sucks. Okay, the hammocks of the time were basically clewed end hammocks. Okay, they were not the type of gathered end hammocks that you find so comfortable on the market today. I am a big hammock aficionado, particularly for the southern states, because they are a superior sleep shelter system for hot environments. But they are very, very comfortable even for cold environments, but they require insulation. And because of their gathered end construction, they don't tip, they swing back and forth, okay? They lull you to sleep. The hammocks in the 1920s were a clewed end hammock. Most of them were semi-bridges in that they had a rod at the ends. and then the clews, which are strings coming from the main body of the hammock, that gather at one point on either end of the hammock and then are suspended from the trees or the porch post. Okay, and this, even though it does promote the swinging back and forth, it also promotes tipping of the hammock. Okay, you can sleep in one of those hammocks in the backyard for long enough to get a sunburn. But I will pretty much guarantee you that getting a sunburn isn't what woke you up. It was you fell into a deep enough sleep that your body moved slightly and you didn't know it until that hammock started tipping and you felt yourself falling out. Okay, now that's great for waking up from a nap in the backyard. But if you do that 2 or 3 times during the night, you're going to wake up grouchy. And you're going to lose the principal advantage that hammocks have today, and that is giving you a comfortable night's sleep so that you are refreshed and able to go out for another day's hiking. If you sleep in a tent today and you do long distance hiking, you do fewer and fewer miles a day because every morning you wake up, you're more and more tired. But with a modern hammock, you wake up refreshed and feeling ready to go. And you can camp from dawn till dusk, and when you arrive, you set up your hammock and you get a very comfortable, restful night's sleep. You will not get that from a 1920s hammock. You're not even going to get it from a Navy surplus Navy hammock. Okay, those are clewed end hammocks. All of these hammocks are too short to get you a flat enough lay that you will sleep comfortably. Okay, the guys in the Navy, they were forced to sleep in those hammocks because if they wanted to sleep somewhere else, they had to get off the boat, which involved getting wet and maybe drowning. Okay, and after you spent 5 or 6 weeks sleeping every night like a banana, you got used to it. Okay, by the late 1930s, the Navy no longer was building ships with provision for hammocks in them. They were getting tired of having sailors needing back surgery. Okay, they sucked. These hammocks, when introduced, were not for the crew comfort. Were not for maximizing crew comfort. They were designed for maximizing the interior space of the ship for things like barrels full of ship's biscuits and salt pork and fresh water. Okay, and we know they weren't maximized for comfort because only junior enlisted men slept in hammocks. Once you got up above the chief petty officer and officer ranks, you slept in a bed on board that ship because if you've been in the military, you know rank has its privileges. So go ahead, if you want to, and use a 1920s hammock for camping. We would require you to use a hammock made of the proper length and the proper suspension, which looks a bit like what's on the picture on the screen right now. And we would require you to use methods of construction and materials of the period, which includes things like sewn steel ring grommets instead of brass grommets. Okay? What we don't want to have happen at a classic camping re-encampment is somebody to bring one of these 1920s hammocks, find out that they suck, and then say, okay, well, now I know I can bring a hammock. Let me see if I can make a gathered end hammock like the one I bought off of Amazon last week. or last year, and I've been sleeping in all year long and found so comfortable. Let me make one of those gathered hand hammocks out of canvas, and we'll call it classic camping. And that's not it. Okay, you're doing what we call they'd have used it if they'd have had it ism. Okay, and you're not learning anything that way. You're really not. Okay, what you're doing is the same thing you did last weekend in your nylon hammock. You're just sleeping in a canvas hammock. You're not doing it the way Horace Kephart did. Okay, you're not practicing original campcraft. You're practicing modern day bushcraft. Okay, two different things. Alrighty, I hope I didn't make this too long. I hope I didn't make anybody angry or hurt any feelings with this. I would not recommend you use, make, or buy a 1920s hammock for going hammock camping in the 1920s. You're not going to be comfortable. I'm trying to save you money, really. Okay, I'm not trying to be a stitch Nazi. I'm trying to save you from a bad experience. I'm trying to make you buy once and cry once. And if you buy one of these hammocks, you're either going to be so stubborn that you don't mind sleeping uncomfortably, or you're going to start looking for another way. Alrighty? We'll see you down the trail.